Sarah Williams gripped her swollen belly, the pain radiating sharply through her lower back. She had been at Metropolitan General's emergency room for hours, her contractions growing stronger, her worry for her unborn child consuming every thought. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting a cold glare on the worn linoleum floor. Sweat clung to her skin as she struggled to maintain composure. Behind the reception desk, Patricia Hendris looked up briefly from her magazine, her blue eyes sharp with impatience. "Please, I have insurance," Sarah pleaded, her voice trembling. Patricia's lips curled in disdain, barely acknowledging her. Sarah took a tentative step forward, instinctively protecting her baby. Patricia stood abruptly, her presence towering and authoritative. "Don't raise your voice in my ER," she snapped, and without warning her hand struck Sarah's cheek. Pain and shock rippled through Sarah, who grabbed the desk to steady herself. The waiting room fell silent, the air thick with tension and fear. Other patients watched, their own worries momentarily eclipsed by the confrontation. Dr. Jennifer Carter, a resident, observed quietly from the edge of the room, noting the escalating aggression. Security cameras recorded every moment, the scene unfolding in stark clarity. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as another contraction gripped her. She could feel something wrong, her past experiences with loss sharpening the terror. Patricia circled her like a predator, words dripping with contempt, dismissing Sarah's urgent need for medical attention. "Some people wait all night," she said coldly. "Maybe if you had better insurance—" Sarah fumbled for her insurance card, her hands trembling. Dr. Carter stepped closer, her instincts demanding intervention, but the young physician was wary of challenging Patricia's authority directly. Every fiber of Sarah's being was focused on protecting her baby, but the head nurse's venomous words and actions compounded the fear. Tension crackled in the waiting room, a storm about to break. Carlos Mendez, the janitor, watched helplessly, understanding the risk if he intervened. The oppressive hierarchy of the ER and the night shift's unspoken rules weighed heavily on everyone present. As Sarah tried again to explain the bleeding and the intensifying pain, Patricia's response was brutal and dismissive. The slap had broken the threshold of patience, signaling a confrontation that would ripple far beyond this room. Unbeknownst to Patricia, the mayor's wife had already sparked a chain of events that would expose systemic failures, force accountability, and demand justice. Every eye in the room now bore witness to the collision of power, fear, and courage, the consequences of which were about to unfold in ways none could yet foresee. Sarah's breathing grew more ragged, each contraction stabbing with relentless intensity. She sank deeper into the plastic chair, her knuckles white as she gripped her belly. The antiseptic scent of the ER mingled with fear, making her stomach churn. Patricia Hendris remained a looming figure behind the desk, her presence suffocating, her judgment sharp as knives. "I said wait," Patricia snapped, ignoring the warning signs of distress. Sarah's pulse quickened, the wetnesses between her legs confirming her worst fear, premature labor. Dr. Carter intervened, her voice calm but firm. "This is serious. We need to assess her immediately." Patricia's lips thinned into a line, the fight for control evident. The waiting room felt electric, other patients now recording on phones, the silent witnesses ready to document every injustice. Carlos Mendez set down his mop, eyes burning with anger and fear, knowing that any act could jeopardize his livelihood, but also understanding the moral imperative. Sarah's tears mingled with sweat, a physical manifestation of desperation. "Please, someone check my baby," she begged. Patricia's hand lifted again, poised for dominance, when Dr. Carter stepped between them. Tension escalated, the room holding its collective breath. The confrontation reached a crescendo as Sarah's contractions intensified, her body trembling under the strain. The head nurse's authority, built over decades, now faced its first true challenge in years. Sarah felt the walls of the ER close in, every sharp fluorescent light a reminder of vulnerability and systemic power. Fear collided with determination, and in that fragile moment, the trajectory of the night, and of Metropolitan General itself, began to shift irrevocably. The first small crack in Patricia's control appeared, unnoticed by most, but critical. The patient's dignity and safety hung in the balance, and the stage was set for a reckoning that would extend far beyond the confines of the waiting room. Sarah doubled over, clutching her abdomen, the wetness spreading as a contraction tore through her like fire. Her breaths came in short, shallow gasps, each one a struggle against rising panic. Around her, the ER buzzed with muted tension, patients shifting in their chairs, some craning necks, others cautiously recording the scene on phones. Patricia Hendris loomed behind the desk, her posture rigid, face a mask of controlled aggression. Dr. Carter knelt beside Sarah, her young face set with determination. "We need to move now," she said firmly, ignoring Patricia's protests. Patricia's blue eyes flashed with fury, but the presence of cameras and the watchful eyes of other staff curbed her immediate reaction. Sarah's heart raced as another contraction racked her body. She could feel the life inside her moving with urgency, reminding her why she had fought so hard to come to the hospital despite the hostility. Carlos Mendez positioned himself where he could observe, his phone clutched tightly, ready to capture any further abuse. The waiting room had become an unintended courtroom, every action scrutinized. Patricia, sensing a challenge to her authority, called security, her voice cutting through the hum of fluorescent lights. Mike Foster approached reluctantly, his hand hovering over the radio, wary of taking sides. Dr. Carter remained steadfast, guiding Sarah to a safer area near the treatment bays. "This baby needs immediate attention," she insisted. Patricia tried to interject, but her voice faltered under the gravity of the growing crowd, recordings, and witnesses. Sarah, trembling and tear-streaked, followed Dr. Carter, her mind focused entirely on her baby's survival. The stark contrast between fear and courage, authority and righteousness, played out in real time, and the ER walls seemed to hum with the anticipation of justice finally confronting long-standing abuse. Sarah's ordeal had become a flashpoint, an unfolding drama where human dignity clashed with unchecked power. In the small space between panic and resolution, she realized something pivotal. The course of the night would alter more than her own fate. It would expose the systemic failings of the institution around her, laying bare the necessity of accountability and courage. The pain surged through Sarah like a tidal wave, leaving her gasping and clinging to the edge of the gurney. Dr. Carter's hands were steady, guiding her through each contraction while her eyes darted toward Patricia, who fumed behind the reception desk. Cameras in the waiting room captured every tense moment, the patient's murmurs and whispers creating a chorus of tension and anticipation. Carlos Mendez kept recording, his conscience outweighing the fear of repercussions. Mike Foster, security guard, hesitated, torn between protocol and morality. The fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows, turning every movement into a silhouette of conflict and courage. Patricia's attempts to assert control grew desperate, her voice rising in fury. But Dr. Carter's calm authority created a protective barrier around Sarah. The room seemed suspended in time, each second stretching as adrenaline, fear, and urgency collided. Sarah's belly contracted violently, and she pressed her face into her hands, praying silently for her baby's safety. Around them, the ER became a stage where human dignity, systemic injustice, and courage converged. Patricia's veneer of control began to crack under scrutiny, the power dynamics shifting in subtle but undeniable ways. Each witness, each recording, each whispered complaint eroded the head nurse's authority. Sarah, though exhausted and terrified, felt a small surge of hope. Carter's steady hands and firm voice reminded her she was not alone, that there were people willing to fight for what was right. The baby inside her seemed to respond, a tiny spark of life amidst the storm. The confrontation had escalated, but now forces beyond the ER, cameras, social media, and witnesses ensured that justice, however delayed, was on the horizon. Each step Sarah took, each breath she drew, moved the night toward a turning point that would challenge entrenched power and ultimately transform the emergency room forever. Sarah's contractions intensified, each one sharper than the last, radiating through her back and abdomen. She clutched the sides of the gurney as Dr. Carter guided her toward the delivery area. Patricia Hendris, realizing her authority was being publicly challenged, glared from the reception desk, her composure faltering under the scrutiny of security cameras and witnesses. Carlos Mendez, phone recorded every tense movement, the crowd of patients whispering and murmuring amplifying the pressure. Mike Foster hesitated, torn between protocol and moral responsibility. the radio at his side buzzing with potential orders. The fluorescent lights highlighted the strained tension in the room, shadows stretching across the floor like dark fingerprints. Dr. Carter's voice remained calm but urgent, keeping Sarah focused and steady. "You're doing great, just breathe with me," she instructed, while assessing the urgency of the situation. Another contraction hit, sharp and punishing, and Sarah's body shook, her face wet with tears and sweat. The power dynamic in the ER had shifted. Patricia's attempts to dominate were now undermined by evidence and witness attention. Patients recorded the scene, and social media streams buzzed as the unfolding emergency exposed the nurse's cruelty. Sarah's fear for her baby, combined with the growing support from Dr. Carter and the silent but watchful staff, created a strange mixture of terror and hope. Each step toward the treatment bay was a step away from oppression and toward justice. Patricia, momentarily frozen by the reality of cameras and witnesses, realized her actions would have consequences far beyond her control. Sarah felt a small but vital surge of resilience. She was not powerless. The ER, once a place of intimidation, was now a space where courage and integrity asserted themselves. The labor pains, the confrontation, and the witnessing eyes all combined, forming a turning point in the night where fear and authority collided, and where human dignity demanded recognition. The contractions came faster now, each one stealing Sarah's breath and bending her body with relentless intensity. She gripped to Carter's hands for support, her knuckles white, sweat running down her temples. Patricia Hendris backed away slightly, her authority undermined as patients and staff silently recorded every action and word. Carlos Mendez kept his phone steady, capturing the head nurse's aggression, while whispers in the waiting room turned into murmurs of outrage. Mike Foster, security, observed cautiously, unsure how far Patricia would go. The fluorescent lights cast stark, unforgiving shadows across the room, highlighting the tension and fear in every face. Dr. Carter guided Sarah to a nearby treatment bay, insisting that the baby's welfare took precedence over hospital hierarchy. Another contraction struck, sharp and punishing, forcing Sarah to gasp aloud. She closed her eyes, focusing on the small hand gripping hers, the reassurance of presence and advocacy giving her a fragile thread of hope. Patricia attempted to assert control, but the cameras and witnesses nullified her intimidation. Social media streams had already picked up the escalating confrontation, the story of abuse and courage spreading beyond the hospital walls. Sarah's fear and pain coexisted with a newfound determination, a realization that her actions, voicing distress, insisting on care, were not only necessary for her baby, but emblematic of standing up against systemic injustice. Each step, each breath, propelled her closer to safety and justice. The ER, once a place of fear and oppression, now reflected the shifting power dynamic, compassion, integrity, and courage rising against cruelty. Sarah knew the night's events would leave lasting consequences for everyone involved. But in that moment, the focus was singular: her baby and the survival that depended on immediate action. The room was tense, poised on the brink of pivotal change, as the clash between authority and accountability reached a critical turning point. Sarah's body shuddered violently with each contraction, her breaths coming in sharp, desperate gasps. Dr. Carter held her hands, guiding her through the pain, her face etched with focus and concern. Patricia Hendris, now visibly unsettled, tried to assert authority, but the mounting evidence of her misconduct, recordings from Carlos Mendez and multiple patient witnesses, kept her in check. The fluorescent lights highlighted the tension in the room, shadows casting a dramatic backdrop to the unfolding crisis. Mike Foster, security guard, hovered nearby, prepared but hesitant to act without clear orders. Patients and staff murmured, some filming, some whispering, all witnessing the power dynamics shift. Sarah's water had broken, urgency replaced fear with adrenaline. Dr. Carter moved decisively, signaling for support staff, her voice steady. Each contraction drew Sarah closer to exhaustion, yet her determination to protect her baby was unyielding. Patricia's authority, once unchallenged, crumbled further under scrutiny, the realization of impending accountability dawning on her. Carlos's recordings captured every expression, every word, the silent documentation amplifying the stakes. Sarah's tears mixed with sweat as she pressed forward with Dr. Carter's guidance. the baby's life hanging in a delicate balance. The ER had transformed from a place of intimidation into a battleground of justice, where courage, integrity, and moral responsibility challenged long-standing abuse of power. Every second brought the moment closer when consequences would meet injustice, and Sarah, despite pain and fear, felt the first glimmers of hope piercing through the chaos. In this crucible of human resilience, the night's events were carving a path toward change, with the helplessness of the past giving way to action, advocacy, and the assertion of fundamental dignity. The intensity of Sarah's contractions grew, each one searing and relentless, forcing her to clutch the sides of the gurney. Dr. Carter's hands were steady, guiding her through each wave of pain, while her eyes scanned the room for any additional assistance. Patricia Hendris, confronted with the undeniable scrutiny of security cameras, patient witnesses, and Carlos Mendes' recordings, struggled to maintain her composure. The fluorescent lights above reflected the mounting tension, throwing sharp shadows across the ER, amplifying the gravity of the moment. Mike Foster, security, shifted uneasily, aware that any action could have significant consequences. The waiting room had become a silent chorus of observation and indignation, each patient and staff member acutely aware of the unfolding events. Sarah's water had broken fully, and her breathing came in short, ragged bursts, every inhale a struggle, every exhale a plea for safety. Dr. Carter's calm, professional voice cut through the chaos. "We need to move now," she insisted, preparing to transition Sarah to a delivery bay. Patricia's attempts to assert authority faltered under the weight of evidence and witness attention. Social media streams had already begun capturing the confrontation, amplifying its reach beyond the hospital. Sarah's fear and pain intermingled with a determined resolve to ensure her baby's survival. Each step, each contraction, propelled her closer to immediate care. The ER, previously a place of intimidation, now reflected courage, advocacy, and moral accountability rising against cruelty. The night had transformed into a decisive moment where systemic failures and personal resilience collided, setting the stage for justice, reform, and the protection of the most vulnerable. Sarah's body convulsed with another contraction, every nerve screaming in protest. She gripped Dr. Carter's hands, finding fleeting comfort in the steady presence beside her. The ER lights flickered overhead, accentuating the harsh reality of the situation. Patricia Hendris stood at a distance, her face pale with the dawning realization that her control was slipping. Witnesses had begun recording, their phones capturing every word and action. Carlos Mendes' footage added to the growing evidence that Patricia's authority had been abused. Mike Foster, security, monitored the scene, torn between following orders and acting morally. Sarah's water had broken completely, the urgency was undeniable. Dr. Carter moved decisively, directing support staff and preparing the delivery bay. Social media buzzed, live streams spreading the unfolding confrontation across the city. Sarah's fear was tempered by resolve. She would protect her baby at all costs. Each contraction drew her closer to the care she urgently needed. Patricia's dominance waned under the scrutiny, her previous arrogance replaced with panic and defensiveness. The ER had transformed into a crucible where human dignity, advocacy, and courage confronted entrenched abuse. The night's events were not merely about one patient, but about exposing systemic failure, asserting accountability, and demanding that compassion and ethics prevail over unchecked authority. Every second pushed the unfolding drama toward a turning point where justice would finally assert itself. Sarah felt a sharp, punishing contraction that left her gasping for air, sweat beading on her forehead. Dr. Carter guided her carefully, supporting her weight and calming her frantic breaths. Patricia Hendris lingered behind the reception desk, the color draining from her face as she realized the gravity of the situation. Every movement and word was being captured by witnesses and cameras, building an irrefutable record. Carlos Mendes continued recording, ensuring no detail of Patricia's aggression was lost. Mike Foster, the security guard, remained vigilant, ready to intervene if necessary. The ER's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows, highlighting the stark contrasts between fear, authority, and advocacy. Sarah's water had completely broken, and urgency defined every motion. Dr. Carter directed staff efficiently, preparing the delivery area and ensuring all medical equipment was ready. Social media feeds were already alive with the story, extending the accountability beyond the hospital walls. Sarah's determination to protect her baby intensified, her fear transformed into fierce resolve. Patricia's control eroded under the scrutiny of video evidence and witness testimonies. The ER had become a crucible of moral confrontation, where integrity, courage, and advocacy challenged entrenched abuse. Each contraction, each breath, propelled Sarah closer to safety and justice, signaling the imminent collapse of long-standing misuse of authority. The unfolding night had become a defining moment of change, not only for one patient, but for the entire institution and the standards of care it was meant to uphold. The intensity of Sarah's labor escalated, each contraction racking her body with unrelenting force. Dr. Carter remained close, guiding her with calm authority, her eyes scanning for any signs of complication. Patricia Hendris stood at the periphery, her face a mix of disbelief and fear as the recordings, witness accounts, and social media attention steadily undermined her previously unchallenged control. Carlos Mendez continued documenting the events, his phone steady in his hands, capturing every moment. The fluorescent lights above reflected the tension, turning the ER into a stage where courage and moral responsibility collided with abuse of power. Sarah's water had broken fully, and the urgency of the situation demanded immediate intervention. Dr. Carter coordinated with the medical team, ensuring that all preparations for delivery were complete and that Sarah was stabilized. Each breath Sarah took was punctuated by pain, determination, and a fierce resolve to protect her baby. The waiting room buzzed with whispered concern, the presence of witnesses amplifying accountability. Patricia's authority continued to crumble, her attempts to assert control nullified by the weight of evidence and public scrutiny. The ER had transformed from a place of intimidation into a crucible of advocacy, where human dignity demanded recognition. Sarah's resilience and Dr. Carter's competence propelled them forward, ensuring that despite the chaos and fear, every step was directed towards safety and justice. In that critical moment, the balance of power shifted decisively, laying the groundwork for accountability, reform, and the protection of the most vulnerable patients. Sarah's body shook with each relentless contraction, her breaths sharp and shallow as she clutched Dr. Carter's hands for support. The ER had transformed into a battleground of justice and urgency, the fluorescent lights casting a stark illumination on every expression and movement. Patricia Hendris's face betrayed a rare vulnerability, her previously unchallenged authority crumbling under the scrutiny of recordings, witness accounts, and social media attention. Carlos Mendez held his phone steady, capturing each tense interaction, ensuring that Patricia's misconduct was irrefutably documented. Mike Foster, security, stood ready, aware that intervention might be required, yet cautious of overstepping boundaries. Dr. Carter's voice was calm, precise, and unwavering, directing staff efficiently to ensure Sarah's safety and the baby's immediate care. Each contraction intensified, drawing Sarah closer to exhaustion, yet her focus remained singular: protecting her child. The waiting room, once filled with passive observers, now pulsed with quiet support and anticipation, every witness contributing to the eroding dominance of unchecked power. Patricia's attempts to assert control were met with factual resistance and undeniable evidence, highlighting the shift from intimidation to accountability. Social media streams amplified the unfolding events, ensuring the narrative of courage, advocacy, and moral responsibility reached far beyond the hospital walls. Sarah's resolve, bolstered by Dr. Carter's expertise and the awareness of witnesses, exemplified the triumph of human dignity over fear, setting the stage for immediate action and systemic change. In this crucible, the power dynamic shifted irrevocably, signaling not only the preservation of life but the assertion of justice against long-standing abuses of authority. Sarah's contractions came in rapid succession, each one a punishing wave that left her gasping and trembling. Dr. Carter maintained a steady grip on her hands, guiding her through the pain and assessing her condition with professional precision. Patricia Hendris, confronted with the mounting evidence and witness recordings, could barely maintain her composure, her authority eroding with each passing moment. Carlos Mendez continued filming, ensuring every action was documented, while Mike Foster, security, monitored the scene with a tense vigilance. The fluorescent lights overhead cast stark shadows across the ER, highlighting the urgency and gravity of the situation. Social media had begun to spread the story, amplifying the scrutiny and accountability Patricia faced. Sarah's focus remained on her baby, determination overriding exhaustion and fear. Dr. Carter directed the staff efficiently, preparing the delivery area and ensuring Sarah's stabilization. Witnesses and patients observed in awe, the power dynamic shifting decisively toward advocacy and moral responsibility. Each contraction propelled Sarah closer to safety, while the relentless presence of evidence and oversight challenged the culture of unchecked authority in the ER. In this pivotal moment, human dignity and courage asserted themselves, setting a precedent for accountability, reform, and the protection of vulnerable patients, with Sarah at the center of this transformative night. Sarah's body trembled with exhaustion as contractions came in rapid succession, each one sharper than the last. Dr. Carter's steady hands and calm voice guided her through the labor, ensuring every precaution was taken. Patricia Hendris stood frozen, her authority completely undermined by video evidence, witness accounts, and the attention of social media. Carlos Mendez continued recording, capturing every moment, every expression, every word that revealed Patricia's misconduct. Mike Foster, security, watched cautiously, prepared to act but constrained by protocol. The fluorescent lights cast long, harsh shadows across the ER, emphasizing the gravity of the unfolding events. Patients whispered among themselves, some filming, all witnesses to the erosion of previously unchecked authority. Sarah's water had broken entirely, urgency defining every movement and breath. Dr. Carter orchestrated the staff efficiently, directing preparations for immediate delivery and ensuring Sarah's stability. Each contraction left Sarah gasping, yet her determination to protect her baby remained unwavering. The ER, once a space of intimidation and fear, had become a crucible where courage, advocacy, and moral responsibility triumphed over cruelty. Social media amplification ensured Patricia's actions could not be hidden, reinforcing the shift in power and accountability. Sarah's resilience, combined with Dr. Carter's competence and the vigilance of witnesses, propelled her towards safety, marking a pivotal moment of justice. In this critical juncture, the night's events crystallized the necessity of systemic change, human dignity, and the protection of the most vulnerable. At last, Sarah was settled onto the delivery table, her body weary but determined. Dr. Carter and the medical team worked swiftly and calmly, the tension from the waiting room lingering in the air. Patricia Hendris had been removed, her authority dismantled by recorded evidence, witnesses, and the swift response of the administration. Carlos Mendez lowered his phone, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders, knowing justice was unfolding. Sarah's contractions continued, fierce yet purposeful, each one bringing her closer to meeting her baby safely. Outside, news crews captured the arrival of Mayor James Williams and the hospital leadership, underscoring the magnitude of the night's events. The ER, once a place of fear and unchecked authority, had transformed into a space where advocacy, integrity, and courage prevailed. Finally, a cry pierced the air. Sarah's baby, healthy despite the trauma and premature arrival. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as relief and exhaustion mingled in equal measure. Dr. Carter smiled, offering reassurance and praise for Sarah's bravery. The weight of injustice lifted, replaced by the promise of systemic change and awareness. Over the following weeks, investigations confirmed the patterns of abuse, leading to policy reforms, healthcare equity acts, and national conversations about patient rights. Sarah held her baby, Maya, in a sunlit room, reflecting on the journey from fear to empowerment. The ripple effects of courage, vigilance, and advocacy extended far beyond the ER, inspiring change nationwide. Sarah's voice, once soft with fear, now carried authority and resolve. Discrimination in healthcare isn't rare, she said. It's just rarely recorded. Every patient deserves dignity regardless of race, income, or connections. Speak up, record it, report it. Don't wait for someone else to act. James added, his voice firm, change happens when ordinary people refuse to accept extraordinary injustice. Every person has power when they demand basic human dignity. The camera captured Maya sleeping peacefully, a testament to the triumph of resilience and justice. The story concluded with a message of empowerment and action. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share this video.